nothing like living a simple life. Something out those aches and pains from working on the farm.
Hey guys, it's Eric, owner of Farpoint Farms here in the mountains of North Carolina. Today we're going to be tackling a subject that I hold near and dear to my heart, and that is the art of the flip. Now, years ago I made a video talking about how to flip a car, how to make a bunch of money in less than 30 days, and I did that a long time ago. It's got some views over the years, nothing too exciting. But since a lot of the people that come to my channel, especially this time of year, are interested in lawnmower repairs, lawnmower videos, riding mowers, garden tractors, that kind of thing, I figured I would show you what I do during the winter months. I collect a bunch of these riding mowers. Here's a clip of 3 that I picked up, right? And so the next process is, let's assess it, let's figure out if we can sell these things, and let's make some money. So today I'm going to walk you through the process of what I do when I get one of these mowers, how I get it ready to sell. And that involves cleaning it up, which I did it in another video, and here's a clip of that right here. Right? And then I'm going to assess what it needs. In the case of the one that I have right now, we're looking at it needs a battery, it needs to have the blade sharpened, it needs an oil change, it needs an air filter, a spark plug, and then this one, it needs to have the carburetor cleaned. That's it. It does not need inner tubes, it does not need tires, it does not need a lot of work. It's actually in really decent shape. So I'm going to walk you through doing those things so that you can see how easy it is to make money fast. Buy a mower for $100, sell it for $350, $250 for 2 hours of work. That ain't bad. That's $1.25 an hour, right? Not bad at all. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to clean it up a little bit. We're going to bring it in. We're going to look it over. We're going to put a battery in. We're going to do all that stuff. And we'll show the end result cutting the lawn here on the farm. Come on, let's go.
You know, none of the 3 that I purchased were startable. You know, they were just sitting there. But this one I have done nothing to. I did just hook up the jump box. My wife said, see if you can drive it in and check it out. What a deal, huh? If it runs, it's not knocking, it's not doing anything crazy. That means the mower is sound.
All right, so we're already in good shape. The thing runs and drives, it shifts through the gears okay, but it doesn't run great, and that's okay. Most of the time when we pick these things up, they are not going to work, or they're going to work poorly. The number one thing that you're going to run into with small engines like this Briggs & Stratton that we're going to be playing with today is the fact that carburetors get gummed up, they get trash in them, and they just no longer work right. That's the number one reason you're going to find a mower that says, you know, ran when parked, or doesn't run, or can't get it started. As long as the engine spins over, as long as you can turn it by hand or turn it with the starter, then you know that chances are there's very little wrong with this mower. A lot of people just don't have the time or the talent to do this job, but it's a very easy job to do. So I'm going to pop the hood on this one here, and I'm going to show you that on this one here, this is a 13.5 power built, and it's a Briggs, you know. It's got an air filter here. I'm going to guess this air filter is nasty. Let's go ahead and take a look. Yeah. Yep, it's ugly. So that's about $6 online. I'm going to go ahead and get that. I also have a spark plug for it. But beneath that, I bet you my problem is here, right? Now, when I do a mower flip for somebody, I want to make sure that they're getting good value for their money. So if it needs a battery, it's going to get a battery. We're going to install that here in a few minutes. But I'm going to replace this fuel filter as well. And I don't need a whole lot of tools. You'll see I have very few tools involved in this. All right, once we have our air filter on, I'm going to show you how easy it is to get this carburetor off and how easy it is to clean it. Most people just don't want to spend the time to do this stuff, and so you can find these deals all over the place. You're not going to lose a whole lot of fuel. You are going to use a little bit of fuel. I'm going to take a pair of vice grips here, and I'm going to squeeze down. Oops. Not terribly tight. I'm going to squeeze down. I'm going to get rid of that. Then I'm going to use a pair of these right here, another pair of pliers here. I'm going to squeeze these clamps and slide them back. And when I pull this, all right, we're going to lose a little bit of fuel. That's okay. And there we go. There's our fuel filter. I'm going to just lay that off to the side. And as you can see, I've got a new one here. So I'll go ahead and I'll install it on the first half of this anyway. There it is. And that's going to protect this carburetor once we've done rebuilding it. It's going to make sure that trash that may be sitting in the tank of this thing doesn't get in there. Once I've got that bolt loose, the last thing I want to do here is unplug this. This is the electronic solenoid, the cutoff, so fuel doesn't leak out of this thing when we're not using it. All right, so I've got those two bolts loose. I've pulled back this hose. We do have a few nuts we've got to take off. There's one here, there's one here, and there's one on the other side, and there's one there. So that is it. We're going to take those off. Again, 11 millimeter or 7/16. I'm going to use a ratchet here in a second, and we'll get that off. Once you have all those off, we're just going to lift up on this. And there it is. We're exposing that. Now is a good time. Take a look. I'm going to clean this off, but sometimes we might have grass caught up in the cooling fins. We don't want that, so this is a great time to go ahead and clean all that. Mice sometimes build nests down in these areas. If we have, we want to take the time to clean those up. But in this case, this one, it doesn't look all that bad. It doesn't look bad at all. So I'm going to pick out the few pieces that I do see here, and we're going to move on. Okay, once we have this cover taken off and I've kind of cleaned up the area a little bit, I'm going to slide this part off. This is our intake runner hose here. So I'm just going to set that aside. And when I do, it exposes this. The same stud that we had that nut on right there, right? Now that that's off and the intake runner's off, we have exposed that there's actually a nut on the stud itself. So we're going to remove those. Those are 8 millimeter. Take both those loose. And they're a little recessed, so I use a deep socket, 1/4 ratchet, but you might be able to get it with a regular wrench. I'm not sure. All right, there's one. Okay, you'll see we have some linkages hooked up here. We got to unhook those. They can be a little tricky, but we're going to take that off. And also, if you've never done this before, probably a good idea to take a picture of that before you take it apart, just so you don't get confused when it goes to putting it back together again. And there we go. There we go. There it is. Wow, that's about $80 just to pay somebody to take that off for you. You can see there's a little gasket here. Next thing I'm going to do, again, I'm going to clean all this area off, but we're going to take this over to the bench. We're going to open it up. I'll walk you through how easy it is to clean one of these. We'll put it back together again. I'll put my new air filter on it, and this thing will fire up like a brand new mower. Now, if you buy one of these things, or if you are working on yours and it has sat all winter long, the fuel that's in here, if you didn't use stabilizer, is probably no good. So you want to maybe open this up without the fuel filter on it and drain that into a tank, close it back off, hook your fuel filter back up, and now you are ready to put some fresh gas in there. So many of these things get gummed up or don't operate well because the gas has gone bad. It gets a varnish to it and it's just no good. Let's take this over to the bench and continue the process. Okay, next up, before I start tearing this thing apart, I want to clean the outside of it off. You can see here there's dust and debris here. It's not a ton on this one, but you might find a whole lot on yours. I don't want any of that getting into the system. These jets that we're going to be cleaning out are very small, and any of that dust get in there and ruin everything. So I got a can of carburetor cleaner. This is BG product. You're not going to come across this at a grocery store. But you can get yourself a can of brake clean at a local hardware store and you'll be good to go. So I'm just going to clean it off. And I'm going to wipe all the excess off there with a rag. And probably clean it one more time. A couple spots still have some sticking on there. And you can use a wire brush if you want to. Like I said, this one here is not particularly dirty. So cleaning this one's going to be fairly simple. All right. Once you've got the outside cleaned up, we're ready to disassemble this, and you're going to be amazed at how easy taking this thing apart is. One thing I'm going to do before I do that, my little work area here, I'm going to go ahead and get all this trash out of here. Because the next step, we got some small parts, and I'm going to put the cap back in this. I don't want any of this trash mixing up with that, so put that down like so. Just wipe that down. There we go. Now I got a nice clean work surface I can work out of, and we are ready. So this right here is how we're going to take this apart. We have this sensor here, not sensor, this cutoff, fuel cutoff, and then we have 2 Phillips or flathead screws. Yours might be a little different. You can also remove this if you'd like. I'll go ahead and set that aside for right now. And that's it. We're still going to need our carburetor cleaner, so I'm going to leave that handy. And here's where all the surprises are kept. I'm just setting everything aside here. When I pop this open, all right. Oh, this one's not even all that bad, really. But you can see, if you can see, right in there, there's silt, there's soot, there's gunk, there's goo, and it only takes a drop of that goo to mess things up. So what I'm going to do is take a nice clean rag here. I'm going to wipe the inside of that out, and you can see it's coming out of there. Beautiful. This thing right here, that's the plunger that activates that solenoid to cut off fuel supply, so when the mower's not running, or if you were to flip over or something like that, that should shut off. On this side, we got a whole lot of weird stuff going on. This is a more modern one. Everything here is plastic, but on some very old models, this will be made out of copper. But that's our float, and so we want to make sure that it works properly. As the carburetor fills with gas, as the bowl, which is the part we just removed, fills with gas, this comes up. When it does come up, it cuts off fuel supply coming in from the fuel tank. So this doesn't look all that bad. You can remove the float. This bolt, or this little pin right here, comes out. But we're not going to do that because there's no need to. That is our main jet, however, and we do want to clean that. So the things we're going to clean inside of this, one hole here, one hole here, one hole here. We're going to spray all that out. We're going to clean the throat, the throttle throat here. And we'll clean the other side too. Here's our choke, right? So we'll clean that. And then we'll clean through the main jets. And we're just going to use that same carburetor cleaner. Brake cleaner will work just as good. I'm going to stuff it right in there. Okay. And it's important to get it from all sides. And you can kind of see it back feeding out. There it is, coming back out through that jet. And here's the smaller port here. And then I'm just going to clean the whole throat. Do the same thing on the other side here. There's another thing I want you to look at here, and that's this gasket. That gasket is not damaged, so I'm going to reuse that. I'm not going to peel it off. If I peel it off, I'm increasing the chance that I damage it. So I'm just going to make sure it's clean. And once everything is dried out here, I'm going to take one last look around. There's another seal, an O-ring that goes around here. That's that black right there. That's what keeps the fuel from leaking out of this. I've got both these cleaned up. I don't see any reason to replace that seal. If you do have to replace it, you can always put some sealant in there. But again, this one doesn't need it. And we're ready to reassemble this thing already. That's all there is to it. Slide that back into place. Insert our 2 screws. Imagine how many mowers that are worth $600 or $700 or even $800 get sent to the scrapyard or get sold for $50 because they just needed to have what I just did. Just had to have the carburetors cleaned. Okay, got that back on. Go ahead and reattach our fuel line. And we're ready to reassemble. All right, ready to reinstall this thing already, and we want to hook up our lines first. I got my glasses on so I can see this little teeny one. I want to put that one on first. That's just going to go through the hole. And then the second one. All right, then we're going to rotate this thing around because it sat like that originally. And we're going to put this one in here. There we go, just like so. That's it. We're going to reinstall our studs. Again, these are the 8mm. And you don't have to go crazy. If you notice, the intake on this is plastic. We don't want to tighten it down so much that it actually breaks or strips the threads. It does have a metal bushing for the threaded part, but you can just rip it right out of there if you're not careful. I'm not known to have a gentle touch when it comes to certain automotive repairs, so I have to remind myself to go easy sometimes. It's one of the reasons I'm using a 1/4 inch ratchet, 1/4 inch sockets, is that it's hard to get too much strength on there, you know. Okay, that's on there. Again, here's another part. I'm going to just clean that off a little bit so we don't get any of that sucked in there. Beautiful. Go ahead and install that. I got my 2 nuts here. Find the other one. There it is. Get those 2 installed. This little hose back here, that's for our positive crankcase ventilation. And pop that back into place like that. Lastly, we're going to hook up our fuel filter and reconnect our fuel lines. We're ready to take off our vice grip. Beautiful. Now, one thing I will do before I put this back together again, I'm going to spray a little WD-40 in this area right here, and that's going to help with my throttle control. Okay, so let's do that. And I'll cycle that back and forth a few times just to make sure that. Cool. I'll wipe up any overspray. And I'm ready to put the cover back on. Now I'm going to clean this cover off real quick. You can see it's kind of dirty around where the air filter hooks up, so I'll just wipe that out. And I'll be ready to do that. All right, that looks a lot better. So go ahead and slide that back in place. Awesome. And reinstall my 11mm nuts and bolts all the way around it. Since we are waiting on the new air filter to come in, I'm going to reinstall this for right now because we're going to move on. Go ahead and snap that into place. And that's all there is to that. That's how easy it is to fix about 90% of riding mower problems. What we're going to do next, we are going to put a battery in it, and then I'll back it outside, let it warm up for a few minutes, and we will do an oil change on this as well. Let's go. Next up, we need a battery. This one didn't even come with a battery, which is kind of a bummer. It's better to have a battery that's dead than not at all, because they do charge a core charge for batteries. I was able to go to my local mower repair shop and get a reconditioned or used battery. And this is one that came out of a customer mower that they decided not to fix. It's a John Deere. It's from 2018, and it still works. So I'm going to put that in there, reattach this. And I'm going to hook up my terminals. Oh, that terminal's damaged, so we're going to go ahead and fix that. You can see that right there. I'll fix that up. Now, selling a mower with a dead battery, you seem like you're going to save a few bucks by doing so. But in my experience, by selling a mower with a dead battery, you're actually losing, because you're going to have a lot less people who are inclined to put a mower battery in themselves. This actually seems like a relatively easy task, and frankly it is, but to some people who are technologically challenged, this might be a giant pain in the you-know-what, and they just don't want to mess with it. So there's a potential customer who's ready to buy this mower that you just lost because you weren't willing to get a $25 or $30 battery. This battery costs $8. The price of a core charge, basically. Okay. Now I'm going to fix that cable. We'll hook that up and we'll move on. Cool. Time to move on. All right, with the battery in it and the carburetor clean, this thing ought to fire up and run, no problem. I've checked to make sure there is plenty of oil in it. There is. I'm going to close my hood, and it's like the first moment of truth. Will she run? Of course she will. I have faith. Once we get it fired up, I'm going to let it warm up, probably run about 3 minutes or so. That'll give the engine a chance to warm up, and any debris or soot or sediment that's in the oil will be picked back up by that oil. That'll help us when we do our oil change to make sure that all the crud is out of the car, or out of the mower. Let's do it. Once the engine has had a chance to warm up, and it's not terribly hot, but just enough to have stirred it up and loosened up that oil, I've got a couple tools here. I've got my 11 millimeter. I've got a bucket to catch this oil because this thing's going to make a god-awful mess. And then I've got some replacement oil, 30 weight SAE, and I've got a funnel. What I want to do is unscrew this and just leave it loose. Leaving it like that, allow air to flow through here. You are going to spill a bunch of this because they were too cheap to put a 1-inch extension here. It's going to drip. And what you can't see, or maybe can't see, is that the mower is sitting at an angle. I've got it sitting out here in the driveway in a place that is not perfectly flat. Now I'm going to go ahead and break this loose, and we're going to go ahead and drain this out. There she goes. It's pretty dirty. This oil, you could tell by the oil that this wasn't the most cared for piece of machinery ever designed. But that's okay, we're fixing it up. Ooh, that's some ugly looking oil. Make sure to clean up underneath in case any of it dripped. There we go. I don't know if you can see that, but ooh, that's ugly. That's real ugly. It's been in there a long time. I'm going to double check to make sure this is tight. We're going to pull out our dipstick, and we will swap that out for a funnel, and we'll start adding our oil. Alright. And last thing I want to do here before I move on to sharpening the blades and greasing any grease points is I want to check and replace this plug. I've got a plug for it. So let me go ahead and pull that out and we'll see what kind of condition it's in. And there we go. And that one doesn't look bad at all. So I'm just going to take a wire brush, clean that off, and reuse that. As a matter of fact, that looks like it was replaced probably the last season this thing was in use. Alright, so there's two more things I normally do to a mower, one of which I am going to do to this, but I'm not going to show you, and that is sharpening the blades. I'll make a separate video that shows how to take blades off of mowers and sharpen them. The other thing that I normally do when I get ready to flip a mower, or if I'm just doing a tune-up or a clean-up on one that I own, is I grease all the grease points. Usually you have grease fittings for the ball joints and for the pivot points on the tractor. This being a relatively low-end model, doesn't have any grease points, so there's nothing that I can do about that, which is kind of strange, but that is what it is. Anyway, let's take this thing for a spin, shall we?